You know what I mean? Hey, the
No.
coaches compass, we're back again. We've done this before with Sam look again, but hey, we're already been talking about things, so I'm gonna get Sam to just keep on talking. There we go. That's
So
our intro.
what I was actually trying to say is that don't press record for a minute so I can tell you this.
Oh shit!
The I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to tell you anyway.
Don't worry,
I'm
I'll
going to
cut it
tell
out
you.
anyway.
No, just for the listeners, like the big part. Yeah, congrats on this podcast. It's sick. Everyone subscribed. They did the right thing. And
Appreciate
you
it.
guys are smashing it. So, which is awesome. But we were talking about the educational pathways. Like, and I'm a big fan of bloodlines. You got to understand the bloodline of the people that you're around. And that's where, there are a lot of coaches that get high praise and they get high profile and they do not give credit to where they got the information from. And they do not get credit of where they stole it from. They don't get credit of how they're trying to monetize that information as well. And I think that's what's really dangerous in the coach education space is, the whole idea is that you become, people want to make money. They become an expert at something and then they speak on that subject and they do not credit the people that came before them. And I think that's a real big poo-poo in my world. Like you have to do that. And I think that's what podcasts are really, what we were talking about there, Vic. It's like, who are we finding now? Who is left? And that's a big part of like the generation that we're in now. Yes, this died last year, or this year, sorry, passed away this year. Louis Simmons passed away the year before. And Louis is probably one of the most important people in the evolution of Western training systems because he popularized special strength. Without Louis, he brought it mass market, like the reverse hyper and the JM press, like every auxiliary exercise that you do to improve your squats and stuff is because of Louis. And because he brought it all over. And now he's gone. So who's carrying that on? And I think there's such misplaced credit we need to go because you've kind of got the first generation, which would be like Mateev and early Soviet influencers, like real influencers, not fucking TikTok wankers. And then you've got Verkhoshansky, Bondarchuk, who then Yesis brought back to America. Most people don't know who Michael Yesis was American. Like, it just baffles me because you've now got coaches working in professional teams and trying to help athletes, and they still don't know their alphabet. I was talking to a guy that you should have on is Jeff Moyer. He interned under Yesis. So the old, if you go on YouTube and find like the old baseball kinematic analysis videos that Yesis has done, Jeff Moyer's in it. Like this is DC Sports Training on social. He's an absolute legend and one of the smartest guys around. And so you kind of then, like those generations come, you've got probably Henk Kajanoff now, some of like the more old school guys, even Vern Gambetta, like he's just a bit angry on social media. He trolled me once, which was fun. Like it's actually speaking of sport speed, he trolled me on a video where I was using hand supported resisted sleds, so using a prowler to stabilize an athlete to develop acceleration power. And he was like, use one or the other, don't use both. And I was like, have you ever tried it with a 150 kilo athlete? And that was the end of that conversation. because if you haven't, you don't know. And so just on that point, like that long rant, I just think it's really important. And some of the work I hopefully you got the book this morning. Like I'm trying to drag everything forward from that time, those original principles and stuff. You can see them there. Those are all the copies I had to fucking pay for myself.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the book yet. I checked this morning. It's still out for delivery because it's still 7 a.m. my time since you guys are, over
Oh
there.
wow, of
Yes,
course.
I'm back on the
Yeah.
States. But yes, author of the sports speed system.
Yeah, there it is. There you go. Well,
Congratulations,
there,
bro. There it is. We were
look
talking
how
about it
thick
before.
that is.
Yeah,
And I've got a really big thumb.
I'm excited to get it, man, because one thing that we had you on the first time, right? We talked about just you going through the editing of the book and finding the editor and all that other
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
way back, right? So how's it been now that the book is out? What was it like to actually get it to the point of selling it, and what is the
Yeah,
feedback there?
yeah. So, I mean, wow, yeah, that's crazy just thinking about that because it was, honestly, it's been an emotional roller coaster and massively transformative in my own identity to myself, if I'm completely honest. Like, the book was probably a topic of conversation in my therapy sessions for about 4 months. So I've had a therapist for a long time, for many different reasons. I'm a big advocate of it, and especially if you work for yourself, you spend all the time alone. You need to speak to someone, so just pay someone to listen to you. That's a good way to think of it, right? But no, so some of my earliest memories of education were just being put in special needs. So I'm left-handed, left-footed, very creative brain, really non-academic. And I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was just before the 11 plus. So your UK listeners will know. And that's basically the test that determines whether you go to like a grammar school or a state school. And I wasn't smart enough to go to a grammar school. So I went to a state school. And from then on, everything was like, you don't fit in an education system. And like that leads to so many different things as a kid growing up. Like you don't feel like you fit anywhere. And when you actually fast forward to now from an adult brain, I just know that I'm a nonconformist. Like I don't fit the system which bankrolls the country, basically. I'm a creative in my own right. And that's one of the things that going through writing the book, I had to really come to terms with it, because the deeper I went, the worse it got. Because I was like, hang on a minute, like I can't do this. Like it was a daily battle. I was like, I can't actually do this. And I can say that in reciprocity, I have done it. But a huge part of me was rewriting those 20, 30 plus years. When I'm 36 now, and people still offer to proofread my social media posts for me because I make spelling mistakes in my emails. And, did you know you made that spelling mistake? Well, if I fucking did, I would have corrected it, right? But if that's if that's all that you've got to think about, then get out of my way. And that's
It
like,
caught the attention.
yeah. And and sometimes it's what's really funny is that I deliberately spell things incorrectly. And just for fun, I'll just put a booby trap in there and be like, right, you're a prick. I'll never speak to you again. Because you told me I've made a mistake. And the, it comes back to this quote from Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, which is what I've read a bit of. Is that a person who is wise can understand someone who makes a mistake in front of them, but does not need to correct them because they know the intention of what they're trying to do. And I think that's the perfect art of coaching and compassion. And throughout this book process as well, it's something I had to learn to become so much more compassionate. Like, we're all athletes. Like, how many times a day do you tell yourself you're a piece of shit? It's like, I'm not fucking good enough at this. This fucking sucks. Because you've always had a coach tell you you're not good enough. Or like your English teacher, you're not good enough. When I got my GCSEs, this was one of the things that stayed with me. Was they handed me it, and I got a D and a C in English, and I just got my GCSEs, and my teacher said, "I didn't know you had it in you." And as an adult, I was like, now I'm thinking, well, if you actually knew how to teach me, then maybe I would have been a bit better at fitting into your box. And so that's been a long, like, facing up to the I am good enough whole scenario that I think that we all face. And it's proving people wrong is a big thing for me. Always, like, I grew up with an older brother, very super talented, 13 months older than me. So I don't know if you guys have got siblings. Like, we're basically twins in that capacity. And I've got a photo when we're kids of us racing, and my brother's foot is over the line and mine's on the ground behind the line. And it was like the perfect representation of our relationship. And then, was it 2015, he passed away. We lost him at Christmas. And so bringing all of that to the table, it's like, I have to win. I had someone to beat all the time. Well, I got beat myself now. And he was straight A student, England trials, like, you name it. I was the workhorse. I was like, his talent taught me determination. And that relationship taught me that, which is what I had to really overcome to put all this book together, knowing that the key motivation behind it is that it's probably going to do more use to my own personal self-esteem than anyone else who reads it. And that's like my win. That's my win from the book. And, when I'm always about trying my best to put the coach I used to be in the forefront of my mind. Like, we're talking about, well, who is there who you can actually lean on, who will help you, who will give you that information. Is the books are where our future is. Our future lies in our past, because there's so many Chinese whispers of what correct training should be. We're now doing things that we think are right that are completely wrong. And so with that, we think, for me, it's now just moving into a whole new sphere of my life. I'm going to writing that first book has led to 6 more books that need to be written. And I'll write them because I can write a book. And I was on holiday, and it's 400 pages. When I got it, people had been buying it. I didn't have a copy. And I got it in the post. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, that's my face on the back. Who's winding me up? Like, there was this whole disbelief, because I'd seen it in a Google Doc for like 6 to 8 months, and it sat, and I didn't go near it for the first year. I put it all together, like, roughly, and then I left it for a year because I was too afraid of it. Like, I just avoided doing it. And so then I got it, and I was like, Jesus fuck, like, this is real. And then the messages that I've had from people have been really and really moving in that regard. And I think one of the big motivations that have come from it is knowing that I was right, and my gut was right, that this book needed to be written, because no one has coherently applied the traditional and foundational principles of improving performance to the new era of team sport preparation. So that's kind of where we go full circle. And I was on holiday I fucking published on this thing, right? And then I had 2 weeks all inclusive in Cyprus. And I went with my girlfriend and locked my phone in the safe for 2 weeks. I always do that when I go on holiday. Just like, my mum and dad know I'm all right, and everyone else, if I'm still on my phone, I might as well still be here. So I just shut it away. And it took about 6-7 days. And I was sat, and it's like, I'm big into Taoism. There's a lot of spiritual education. I've been in groups and stuff around this sort of stuff. And there's a verse from the Tao Te Ching, which was written by Lao Tzu. You should check it out. Dwayne Dyer does a really good summary of it. But he says it. He says, you'll never know where you are unless you don't let the dust settle. When you think about how busy our lives are and stuff, and like 6 or 7 days in, and that's when you kind of connect back to yourself. We were sat at dinner, and I just started laughing. And she was like, what are you laughing about? And I just found it absolutely hilarious that I'd published a book. I couldn't believe it. I was just giggling away to myself. She was like, I just published a book. The dyslexic kid with special needs just published a fucking book. How funny is that? And we just started laughing. We just absolutely started laughing. And that's kind of where we're at now. I went on a bit there, but hopefully that gives I wanted to give a real honest appraisal of what it actually meant to me.
No, that's fucking
Yeah, well,
awesome. Bro, the dyslexic kid that got told he wasn't gonna make it publishes a book that now you could arguably say a lot of the top strength and conditioning coaches, people that are into speed and stuff, are buying and are reading and are
Yeah.
learning from and are kind of picking apart, giving you feedback. I mean, but is there is there a fear for you now that like your words are out there and they're like in writing? You know, because everybody can go out there and like publish a video and that, oh, you know, well, I was under the influence or this, that, and the other. I just misspoke or
Yeah.
something. But it's your words in writing, like it's printed out. You know what I mean? So does that get scary? Because I know for myself, if I were to print out just even a fucking essay that's 2 pages long, like I'd be like, oof, like I don't know if
yeah.
I want everybody to
Well,
read this.
it is scary. I'm not going to lie, and there's been some really, and I'm not going to name names. But I have had people reach out to me and tell me that it's the best book they've ever read on speed training, and high quality coaches. One guy who I will reach out, like I will name, who was the reason really why I got into this business, is Zach Evernesh bought a book. And he and I go way back. So I was watching him on YouTube. And I actually, that's where I fell in love with the history of strength, because he used to talk about the Russian Lion and Charles Atlas and all these guys.
Who's
And
that?
next,
Zach who?
Zach Evernesh, Underground Strength.
Okay.
And he was one of the first S&C guys to go online. He was teamed up with DeFranco back in the day. Gordango's buddies with him. Like he'll know. This is 2006, 2007. It's a long time ago. And I won a competition by showing him my home gym on a video. But he ended up buying a book. And that really moved me. That was really full circle for me. But that's the whole point. With like, now that it's out there, it's up for people to rip apart. And the model I've followed is very similar to what Louis did. He wrote the West Side Book of Methods. Sports Speed System is the book of methods. That's all that is. That's the start. That's just the start. And someone said, oh, you could have put this in, you could have put this in. I was like, I know. You don't, and it's very, people will throw that away. And now that it is out there, like I'm sure there are people that will just buy it to have a look, see what I've written. And I'm sure there are people who are going to take it and run with it. And that's all part of it. But what I will say is the first feedback I got is that people said to me, I can't believe how big it is. I can't believe how much is in there. And that little angry kid who was stuck in special needs reached out inside me and is like, well, why the fuck are you doubting me? Don't doubt me. You know, this ain't a fucking takeaway menu. This is 400 pages of information for you, sort of thing. And so I had to calm that person down for a little while, because that just that's the toy of it. But one thing I will say is that no one else has done it. And if they want to, then I'll happily help. But I think if I do find critics, and I know that I have my critics, I would just like them to read my book and then ask me a question. And I sit with a place of strength, knowing that I conquered so much with it.
Going back to what we were talking about earlier, like in the beginning with regards to like the bloodlines and then the book, what bloodlines would you say this book came from?
Okay, yeah. So for me, it comes from my bloodline. So my first internship was with James Smith, and that was hugely influential. But then before that, I was reading like a lot of stuff online. Like, so it was anything that was on YouTube, all the guys on YouTube. So I learned about Yesis from Zach Evernesh. I think I've got the book here that I bought. Secrets of, here we go. So Secrets of Soviet Fitness and Sports Training was one of the first books that I got, and this was published in this was published in 1988, the year I was born. So this I don't think you can get this anymore.
Oh, really?
Damn.
And so I got that on Zach's recommendation, and then the bloodline that I would call it like the Mount Rushmore. If you had Bondarchuk, James Smith, Tudor Bompa, who else would you put on there? I'm just thinking Tom Tellers. That would be where it comes from. And that's, one of the things I love about Dan Pfaff is that he always credits Tom Tellers, because Tom Tellers taught him everything he knew. But then the people that Dan Pfaff has taught and don't credit Pfaff. And that's where those bloodline things come from. So, I don't think there's and Zatsiorsky, there's literally a list in the book of books that you should read to take these principles back to their first principles. So those would be the real researchers. And because if we think the evolution of our profession, in the 50s was the formation of like structured physical preparation in the Soviet Union. That's where it started after the Second World War, to then, for obviously the communist regime to get Olympic medals. That's where all the politics was won, and so it started then in preparation. They do their base physical preparation up until their talent ID started from they were 12 and 13, and then they started to specialize. That's when the researchers got hold of them, and the coaches like Verkhoshansky, Bondarchuk, Mateev was one of the first adopters of periodization. Then so from there, it all just revolved around development of the shock method, developing of conjugate sequencing, developing of the classifications of training, and then so fast forward in like team sports and stuff, arguably the first influence on physical culture and preparation like American football would have been powerlifting from Louis in the 80s. So Louis would have been hit up by these guys and be like, right, this is how you make people super, super fucking strong and super powerful. This is what we do. But then fast forward, you bring that over to, in the UK, like football, rugby, or soccer and the like, and it's still so siloed. We're training, we take the intervention of plyometric, and we'll train them like a plyometric player, and then be a power lifter, be a bodybuilder, like these archetypes, and then we like go and practice for your sport. And that's where the bloodline stops, because nowhere really in these books, apart from James Smith stuff, talks about how we actually building this with sport practice in mind and sport preparation in mind. Where's the thread? Where does the thread run all the way through? And I think that's a big part of how we start to develop it, because we are it's taken me 10, 15 years to really get to this point with it, by understanding that, going right back to the beginning. And then when we look at the goal of general preparation is to not do general preparation, then why do we see videos of professional teams back squatting at the end of the season when they're only general nature to the sport? We have a clear systemic problem with our education and our guidance. And so that's where the bloodlines come in. And I think I don't know if you saw, I did a video about the England rugby team after they got beaten by New Zealand. I was really pissed, and I saw them on fucking squatting in a camp, and I was like, what the fuck? It's useless, it's stupid, shouldn't do it. Accidentally threw an old colleague of mine I've known for a long time under the bus in the process, and it just got fucking wild, and I was like, delete, we'll get rid of that. But
they got nuts in the comments. Yeah.
I thought I was going to have to move house.
We need it.
But if something like that makes our profession so irate, then we really have a problem. because, where's our attachment to actually what we do? They've maintained a residual, which I think is the biggest load of garbage ever in field sports and team sports, and just tick the strength box. How many times have we heard that? Then we have a real problem, and it takes going all the way back to come all the way forward again to really understand that. Because in the long jumpers rarely lift heavy weights in competition, and they only have to be right twice a year. They'll peak biannually. That's it. Why do we do that when we play every week?
Just to kind of I just wanted to push back on that just a little bit, just to hear what you have to say on that. But I think I saw a post on your page one time where you had said maximal strength doesn't improve speed. And correct me if I say anything outside of what you did not say, but I feel like that's fair to say in a conventional sense. Mm-hmm. But can it have primary influence in some populations? Yeah. And a secondary effect on others?
Yeah. No, and that's I love the way I basically did say that, so it's absolutely fine. Okay. And because there is nuance, there's always nuance. I try to steer away from using the phrase depends, because coaches love to speak in general terms, which is why none of them write books. Let's leave it at that. But in terms of the role of maximal strength, we're looking at the interaction effects of what that has in what we're trying to create and train. So if we go right back to fundamentals of motor learning and fundamentals of biodynamics and the outputs, right? So strength only adapts to in the context of which it's created. Okay, so if we stay with that, and then secondary to that, the specific motor skill of tasks are not improved by maximal strength. So those are the two real fundamental principles. But this is the mistake that I feel that people have made, I've made as well, is starting to attribute an indirect improvement in one area to another. And what I mean by that is that when we first start to introduce training stimulus, most people will introduce it from a weight training perspective, a back squat, a lower limb derivative. And what happens is where we see that early gains is that stimulus has a high magnitude of effect, doesn't it? So it carries a lot of weight. So someone who's really fresh and has minimal training history, that's 0 to 2, which we call learning. I call it learning to sprint. And speed ages basically took Bomper's training age and put speed age, because most team sport athletes have a high training age but a really low speed age. In basically meaning they have a lack of specific preparation to withstand the demands of sprinting. So when we consider that and the role of maximal strength, we always have to consider the context of where maximal strength is created. The first assumption is that maximal strength is created inside a squat rack or on a deadlift platform, where actually maximal strength created in pushing sleds has a huge transfer to acceleration because of the dynamic correspondence and the muscular regimes. However, that is not the first port of call for most athletes and most coaches to try to develop strength in that, because it's not as measurable. And the reason why for a lot of people they believe it is not as measurable is because of a lack of appreciation of transfer and understanding that the change of weight on an implement does not directly influence the effects of transfer. We can actually decrease the rate of transfer of a given exercise by increasing the weight at which we conduct the movement. So the reason why that first magnitude of effect, we start squatting, for example, is going to have a huge magnitude on the body. It's just going to give it a power up. So all the dominoes will fall. And that's where we see the early gains, but then straight away, the magnitude of that load completely decreases. So the effectiveness of that load on the system over time, it's called the law of accommodation, takes about 21 days for a cell to adapt to a stressor placed upon it, which is why Louis Simmons rotated their competitive max lift every max effort day to avoid accommodation. So our goal is to actually chase accommodation. We want maximum strength to stop being useful as quick as possible so we can get rid of it and actually start doing more specific things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. With the last part you said, explain that again. You want maximal effort to kind of say that again?
Yeah, so we want the effectiveness of maximal strength training in a gym environment to lose its effect as quick as possible, because it's general in nature. If we were to think about how from a field sport perspective, I've got like a pyramid that I use. So there's a red line halfway through it, and everything above the red line is sport preparation. Okay, so that's practice and games. Below the red line is preparing for sport preparation, and maximal strength is at the bottom of that. And so everything that we do around developing our speed, power, strength will always come at a cost to the role of the specific motor tasks of the sporting activity itself. So which is why for a given, and this is where a lot of coaches struggle, and I struggle with a lot until I sat back and really thought about it, is that we never get taught multi-year planning. We actually never get taught biannual planning. We never get taught multi-cycle planning, and we never get taught how to consecutively program training. We never get taught it at university. You get taught block periodization from a first 12-week cycle. You get taught the foundation of that, but you're never taught, well, what do you do next? What do you do next? What comes next? And when we go, if you go back, they're in special. Have you guys got special strength manual?
Yes.
Yeah. So inside, if you look at there's a section in it which there's like 5 ways of developing special strength and the means, and it's in my book as well. So don't worry, you'll find it.
Oh, perfect.
And so because it's really important is that during training cycles, right, 2 to 4% increase in a non-specific strength measure is enough to work with, to then create specific strength for it. I spoke to a coach, and he was like, I put 20% on my deadlift and I'm still not fast. And I was like, well, there's 18% too much. And those are the mistakes that we make. I need to, in my first 3 weeks of preparation, I need to just rev the engines in a way that I can. And if that's getting under a bar, and I just need to tap into that area to get close to, or if not more, to where that I got the year before. And you guys are experienced athletes, right? You've got good training histories. How many workouts would it take you to get close back to your bench or back to your lower body lifts after a 6-month break?
Too long.
Yeah. 3, 4. Yeah. And that's the whole point, isn't it? So, because the body becomes so receptive to it, and especially when you think about how your body will respond to stress when it gets clattered at 7-8 meters per second on the field. Like the magnitude of that stressor is so much greater that how are we then going to try to replicate that stressor to create more improvements is just so much lower. And it's really freeing. When I was like, well, fuck, thank goodness. Don't have to do that, because I just need to do enough. And all the, this, if you think about like the secondary effects and the tertiary effects of heavy strength training is a blunted adaptation. we change muscle protein synthesis. We change the elastic properties of the muscles. We detrain. And I used to hate when at my old club, game day +2 was always lower body. 48 hours after a game. Doesn't matter if we were 1 game in or 6 games in or 8 games in, you'd be doing lower body strength. And it just got to the point, and I was like, just lie, lads. We'll just make it up. He never comes into our session. We'll just make it up because this is a fucking waste of time. You're not getting better because you're still 48 hours post game. And you stop lifting weights, boys got faster.
And I feel like everything is, I think, just like you said, everything is very context dependent. But like, I come from a long-term athletic development standpoint, and the guys that I work with are usually youth athletes. I prefer to work with youth athletes. That's usually my population. And our accumulation phase is over the course of 6 to 8 months, right? Yeah. And I'm big on Dr. Yesus, and we have like a 1x20 phase to a 1x14 to a 1x10 to a 2x10, and I have some athletes that are in that accumulation phase of just general strength for almost a year. And we're seeing improvements and we measure usually a 40 or a 20 or just some variation of speed. And we're seeing improvements over that course of that accumulation phase of general strength. Yeah. And I also, and that's why I always feel like it's just very context dependent, because I don't know what population you're speaking to, but I recently listened to the Micah Dangle podcast and Will Rattel and having that argument with Rainey Huntington. And it's like they're coming from, you said, yeah, fucking hilarious. Yeah. But it's like you have two different guys that it's like Rainey Huntington is coming from working with elite athletes that run at times that I've never seen before. And it's just like, with regards to what he's saying, it makes sense to where while we don't work at certain speeds at all. Right. And it's just like, for me, if I were an understanding of the context that Rainey Huntington was coming from, I would say you're fucking insane. Right. Because, that works in my fucking population, Yeah. But, and that was, thinking back and like where we're telling Rainey Huntington going at it about that was hilarious. But like, do you even still feel like that is context dependent? Because I feel like just based off my experience of what I've seen, it's just like, I have guys that we still make gains in the gym and they're still getting stronger on the field or faster on the field. Yeah.
And I love everything that you've just said there, purely because we ran, I ran a youth program for 10 years. We started at 9 years old and started with the 1x20. And the reason why, and we got all those improvements, is similar to you, because that system is just deadly. And the reason why, I was actually really lucky that I went to the CVASP conference in 2012, where Yesis spoke on the 1x20, first introduced the 1x20 system. And what's so powerful about it is that, and this why it works, is because when we talked about that magnitude of effect of training, it keeps it as minimal as possible. Even though it becomes high effort, and you see, like, I don't know if you've ever tried 1x20, either of you. Like, it's disgusting.
No,
like,
we did it in college. We had guys doing fucking 315 for 20.
Yeah, it's so aerobic, and it's just it. And what it allows you to do is manipulate the whole spectrum of the force velocity curve so quickly, but also manage the amount of load that you're putting into the athlete. It's so minimal over time. Whereas, I would use 1x20 with senior guys as a regenerative program because it's really good for those regards. And when you've got that developing athlete, the long-term athletic development, I think what we're able to do is really readdress the mistakes that have been made. So what we're trying to do, and I was speaking to, you should get Joseph Johnson on here. He's a guy that you should get on. Ultimate Athlete Concepts, Joseph Johnson. He's a legend. If you need a book, get a book from him. He's got all the publishing rights to all the big dogs. Before I made the stupid mistake of trying to give loads of copies away, that's who I was meant to be published with. Was with them, and he's such a kind man. He's a wonderful man. So, but the goal Now he talks about, he got his son, he's ran his son through the 1x20. And the goal with a young developing athlete is to elongate the phases of general preparation as long as possible. What we do is we do like a 25, 35 minute split in our hour workouts, where the first 25 is all specialized strength, specific strength for acceleration and speed. And then you've got med ball in there. And then we do the 1x20. And then that's the system that we work at. So we're constantly balancing the role of transfer from motor skill to biodynamics. And that's how you can elongate it for as long as possible. And you should, for as long as possible, until you're faced with someone who needs it now. And that's where, from a senior athlete perspective, if I was working with a coach in a GA program, and he was talking about, well, I've got these 3 buckets. So I've got my old guys, I've got my top guys, and then I've got my developing guys. I was like, okay, so how long do you have your dev guys for? And usually you get about 4 years out. Amazing. The longest serving is 10 years. Okay, sweet. So we need to start creating models that serve these guys and push them to peak performance as quick as possible, because this is the business of preparation. Once you retire, you retire. Like, you can do whatever the fuck you like when you retire. But when you're in, you've got to squeeze that juice as quick as possible and as hard as possible. And that's the mistake that a lot of coaches make. And it feels like I'm sticking fucking pins in my eyes when you see videos like the one we talked about, where professional athletes that have played 40 games or whatever already, or 40 weeks of preparation, are still doing general exercises. It's like, what the fuck are we doing?
What are you using to gauge this? Like, if me or Coop were to come in and you know nothing about us, like, what anecdotes or data sets are you looking at to determine my training age or my speed age?
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely love that. So clearly, when an athlete comes in and talk to an athlete, you know, they usually give you all their strength numbers anyway. They're so quick to tell you.
My bench max is.
Yeah, 100%. I'm like, okay, so there, first and foremost, someone who does that, they're a powerlifter archetype. So you understand the psychology around training. So they're a powerlifter archetype. Brilliant. Then I know what they like to do. And then with that, I will understand the way that they express themselves on the field. Because what they've done is create the association between being a powerlifter and being good at what they do best. And I think that's the big thing that we understand. So then we've got to slowly unravel that. But then what we also look at is just from a technical perspective, can they even accelerate, change direction, and can they get up to top speed or close to top speed? If they can't, then it's learning to sprint. Can they successfully put through 2 to 3 rounds of 20-meter drills without cramping? Because that will show specific capacities that we're lacking. And that's that whole goal of sport preparation, is to create high degrees of power and capacities of the muscles specifically used in the task. And so when we look at that, some things I will bake into the early phases of the program is, well, can you put together 4 or 5 runs above 85% and don't die in a workout? Can you even do that? Can you withstand a base workout without showing cognitive fatigue or physical fatigue? And if they can't, then that's how we start building. It doesn't even become about numbers. And I've really got to the point where most athletes that will come in, I will cut their training volume in half for the first 6 weeks, because most athletes operate at a systemic high level of fatigue. The best workout you'll put down is the one after you've had 3 weeks off. Your first day of practice, I'm good. Day 2, shit. And then you learn, and then all that the body does, it's think law of accommodation, 21 days of stress and the body will adapt. So after 3 weeks of training, you're like, oh, this is the new level, because it's not managed well enough. throughout those first cycle. This is that multi-cycle approach. So if you, all of a sudden, if you think of the body like a pump, that pump is just constantly being compressed. We have so much compression in the system that it struggles to find anywhere to breathe. And so you have to decompress the body, like figuratively and literally. We have to increase the space between our spine and our joints in order for the processes to take part. And example recently, I've got a Gaelic player that I work with remotely. We didn't touch a weight for over 6 weeks in season, and he was backing up 30k on field, breaking 9 meters per second every week. We didn't touch a weight, which we didn't need to, because the goal was decompression. All the training was creating compression, because he was putting a game and 2 sessions was 30k on feet. We don't need, if we look at running as an exercise for strength and power and speed, then we don't need to do anything else to improve strength or power and speed, because we're doing it all on the field. So we did yoga. I just let him stretch it out. I just let him sit and get loose, decompress the body, decompress the mind. Boom, 9 meters per second, 9 meters per second, 9 meters per second, backing up 30k weeks. And those are the changes that you make, because we let go of everything that's general. We should get rid of it. And when I first started doing that, I'll be honest, and all your listeners and coaches out there, I was like, because I am literally removing all of the certainty that I had in preparation. But the certainty that I had in preparation was actually the thing that was stopping my athletes from improving. Because I am certain that I can improve strength. I am certain I can improve broad jumps. But was I certain I could keep improving speed without those things? So it's addition by subtraction. And that in itself starts to create this, big reflective process, which ends up in that thing that you see behind me.
So
Cool.
What's next for Sam? And we've obviously seen you doing YouTube, or you've been on a few more podcasts. Are you going to? I know there's a big conference in the UK coming up. I don't forget what it's called. Sportsmith something. Yeah, I believe that's it.
Yeah, they don't invite me to their one.
Yeah, you're banned from those type of things. But what is up? What is Sam up to next?
Yeah. I don't. To be honest, I don't know why I'm not in that bubble. I say that I'd say other things, but each to their own. Each to their own. I create my own stages. That's what I do, right? So, but you got to put this. A little bit of this front on. Like, if you're 6'4" and 100 kilos and can run over 10 meters per second, who else are you going to share a stage with?
Thanks.
And so we're doing this, and that's what I say to myself, just to give myself a pat on the back. It's okay. Not everyone has to like you. You just have to like yourself.
Right.
So next, what we got? I'm speaking in Manchester. Ben Cartwright is another guy you should get on, the Football Fitness Federation. He does some really great work. He runs a podcast as well. So I'm speaking for him, and we're going to make an awesome event up there. And I'm over in Northern Ireland on the 16th, doing some cool stuff. Yeah, 16th of November. And really, I guess the big thing for me is about the way in which we can start to really tackle this big problem that we've got. And the last one thing that's really cool, and you guys have played sport and retired from sport as well, in different variations. It's so important to contemplate that you're never going to do anything forever. And it's like a Buddhist practice of just contemplating your own death. So because we die many times in our life, we just don't figuratively die. So, I've written a book. I can walk away from this whenever I want. And that gives me so much freedom and allows me to do things the way I want to do them. So 60 seconds or less is not going to help me teach people. So, I'm dedicating all my time to develop YouTube channel. Pretty much everything that people have to pay money for, I'll just teach you, because the sports speed system literally starts where everyone else finishes. So we might as well get people there as quick as possible so we can start making a difference from that. And I'm working on something called the Sports Speed Insider, which is trying to tackle that in another way where coaches don't have too much time for education. So I just do 10-minute whiteboards, give you workouts and break down exercises and how you should use them. And I'm also exclusive, getting my own AI. So I'm turning myself into an AI for people.
Let's go.
So that's what's next. There's not a lot, you know.
Not too much, just a little bit.
Yeah, I can't believe we've done an hour already. That's wild.
I know.
But we've got books, you know, things that are working. The next one that probably it'll take a couple of years because we're close to about 250 sales of the book already, which I'm blown away from. And I really want to dive into the next book will be Special Strength Training for Speed. It's a book that really needs to be written because that's been pretty much the crux of our topic that we've really smashed out today. And that's the area that I think coaches can do so well in because they're so well versed in strength, just not well versed enough in the way that we need to develop strength. And I want to give coaches confidence in that and looking at some studies. If anyone's got actually your listeners, if anyone's got load cells sensors, like force sensors, I'm doing some research on some specific joint angles and stuff like that anyone reach out. I just need some help with that. So
load cell sensors. What is that, not a force plate or?
So like encoders. So you know, like that you do a mid-thigh pull on, but it's just like a big, very expensive luggage handle, basically. You know,
I actually think I know somebody that they sell medical equipment out in Hungary, and I know
and also Vald, I think has that system too. They'll be in the UK this week because I know we have their timing gates at D1. So I know that I can give you contact for them too.
What's next with you guys?
I'm looking for a job, so if you know anybody,
mate, fuck a job, you don't need.
Well, that's the thing. I'm relocating with my girlfriend. She actually lives in London, so if you know anybody that you can connect.
Are you coming to London?
Oh yeah, that's either London or we're looking at London and Barcelona. So if you got any jobs in London,
Barcelona, go to Barcelona.
Sam, don't go to London. Just go to Barcelona.
If you know any connections in Spain, let me know.
I got connections in Portugal, but
I'll take that as well.
We might be able to do. Yeah, we may be able to do something. That's exciting.
No, yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, I'm come to the coast when you come over.
Yeah, I'm stateside now, general managing at a gym, and then continuing on this podcast. You know, trying to figure out what is. I'm seeing how Jay is enjoying retirement and seeing what his next steps are, so we can figure out when we kind of bring everybody together to kind of maybe we do something in America, maybe we do something in Europe where we bring all these coaches together and have our own kind of conference for the Coaches Compass.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't really go to conferences much.
Me neither.
I hope your listeners don't think less of me for this, but I think most of them are shit, basically, because I do so much teaching now, and think from my dyslexic brain, and I think one of the strengths of being dyslexic is that you see things so differently that, you know, I think most of the coaching profession are all fucking right brain people, so they just don't understand the words that are coming out of my mouth anyway. So we're speaking different languages. So that in itself is like you have to deal with kinesthetic people who try to live in an academic world, not the other way.
Yeah.
And that's why I love, you know, hosting my own events and doing spin-offs. So give me 10 people in front of me that I can look in the eye and talk to and show. And I think, let's do something. Let's just do something.
Yeah, for sure. Jay, do you have the question from our last guest?
Oh, you're doing this, eh?
Yeah.
Question from the last guest. We took it from what is his name?
Nick?
I think it is Nick, yeah. I forgot what the question for him was. What is it? The question for him was kind of crazy. It was the question I had to ask him, and I kind of knew the answer was just like, do you believe what you do matters? And he was like, who the fuck was the last guest?
It was I can tell you who the guest was that asked him that. Tim Karen, who's the one that I posted a question about, or the statement that he said that if you're not continuing education in whatever your niche is, or and working out, then as a coach, you need to just fucking quit. And that's what he just bluntly he tells a lot of coaches that, and that he's educating them because a lot of coaches, and I think that's where the question stemmed off from, like, does what we do matter? You know what I mean? Like what you're doing every day on a daily basis with your athletes, do you believe it matters? Because we're not reading or getting hiring your education or continuing to learn whatever your niche is, and if you're not fucking working out, doing the shit that you're telling your athletes to do, then why do you believe that it matters? So I think that's so I understand why he thought the question was like, yeah, of course, like it matters. But that's how the question stemmed. My bad. I didn't give you context to it.
So if we can't find the question, you can just come up with your own question for the next guest and then answer yourself.
Yeah. So I've got a question for the next guest. What would you do if you didn't coach? And the context around that, right, is when I was with James Smith, and he said to me something that stuck with me, and it played into my dyslexic brain so well. It was like, if you coach, but you could work and apply everything you do to a carpenter, doctor, solicitor, banker. If you can take that and you apply that process to those people, you're on the money. And I think what he was alluding to is something very esoteric in nature, but if you can start to understand the way things work, then you'll be all right.
The governing dynamics of coaching.
Huh?
Did he write the governing dynamics of coaching? Yeah.
Yeah, I got it down there on my library now.
That's probably like one of the top books I've ever read.
It's so good. When I was with him, he was writing the Applied Sprint Manual. Mm-hmm. So when he was breaking down, I remember sitting in this room with him and he was breaking down Usain Bolt splits whilst chugging a fucking huge protein shake and like eating this big plate of mince and rice. Like the dude he's so strong, so fucking strong. And he was just like, just chugging. And I was just like taking it all in. But you know what I was thinking about? One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my book in between like Special Strength and all the others and pretend it's someone else's bookshelf and just post a picture of it. I think that'd be really good fun.
Marketing right there.
Yeah. So-and-so just sent me this. Humbled.
You can put so many different books in it.
Yeah. I'll chuck in like something, some autobiography from Steve Jobs or something, just for like, but you may not appreciate this, but when we launched it was launched in like rugby coaching as one of the categories. You've got to pick categories, and it's really easy to get a bestseller on Amazon. Mind you, get a bestseller, but basically you have to get enough books to buy within a certain period of time, and it will put you bestseller in the category. But at one point, I was leading number one in strength and conditioning and all that sort of stuff, and we're still top 10, I think, in some. I was the head of Razzie Rasmussen's autobiography, and he's the head coach of South Africa. And so I put on my Instagram story, I was like, about time one Englishman is beating a South African, because they knocked us out of the World Cup and they beat us in the World Cup in rugby. And the irony of it is that only a Welsh person liked it, and the Welsh hate the English in rugby, and it was just like dead. And I was like, oh, that's tragic. And like a few of the England rugby players follow me on Instagram, who I used to work with and stuff, and they just didn't see the funny side of that.
Well, man, the good thing is Jay's gonna have plenty of questions for you from rugby stuff, because I know he's trying to go into that field.
That's actually what I'm trying to go into right now.
Yeah, amazing. So plenty of stuff for you guys to talk about, but that's it for us for today. We chopped up a lot of stuff in here. Episode number 2. You can probably say there'll be an episode 3, because no telling what Sam will be in the next. Because it was 5 months ago, 4 months ago, something like that was our first interview. Now we're sitting here talking about a book. Might be on who knows
I'll
what
tell
next
you.
time.
I'm going to tell you off air just before we go what is actually coming.
Let
Boom.
me go ahead. Let me turn this thing
I'll
off.
see you